Welcome back to the life of Bam Margera. Last time, we talked about Steve-O's out on bail, and this time, we're taking a huge milestone by talking about Viva La Bam Seasons 2 and 3. It's evident that Viva La Bam's first season was a success. A lot of people found the Jackass spinoff to be simply entertaining and comedic, due to the mischievous actions we see through the CKY crew. At the end of Season 1, Bam called out an eviction from Township and read it live on air.
I'm so glad I moved. Now I have 14 acres, the size of Graceland, right, Phil?
True,
Phil,
but
Graceland.
Concord was nice,
yeah.
Concord was not nice. Now I live in Graceland. It's fucking way better.
Graceland
I know,
is
but
better.
you know what? Now that you're on a lot of more acreage, there's a lot more trouble.
And Bam was ready to continue to do whatever the fuck he wanted. It was also mentioned by Ape during the Raising a Jackass interview that security concerns were also an issue due to them mentioning things being robbed out of the Margera household. I wonder who could be doing that. Only a few months after, Viva La Bam was set to air a new season on MTV. As a matter of fact, all 5 seasons of the show aired in such a short time frame, in less than 3 years. Therefore, Viva La Bam Season 2 and 3 was released on DVD on April 12, 2005. The DVD combines the 2 seasons into one with the inclusion of behind the scenes, outtakes, music videos, and a photo gallery. Both seasons premiered in spring and winter of 2004 respectively. In addition, 1 week before the airing of Season 2, Bam and Dunn were part of a now lost MTV special called Top 10 Bam Slams. The special only aired once, and only a few second clip was found by the Jackass community.
Warning.
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 Viva La Bam features stunts performed by and under
The supervision of professionals.
To ensure the safety of performers and animals alike.
The cast, MTV, and the producers must insist that no one attempts to recreate
or reenact any of these stunts or activities.
Going forward, every episode will have a cast member read the MTV advisory to not perform any of the stunts, and also that no animals were harmed during the making of the show. With that being said, I'd like to jump right into Viva La Bam Season 2. CastleBam. The episode kicked off with Bam acknowledging their shenanigans that got them kicked out of the township last season, prompting their need to move almost immediately after. Bam takes the executive decision to relocate both his friends and parents to live with him, but it's going to be done his own way.
This house is going to be my way. Vito's going to be living at the house.
Can I go shopping with you for furniture?
No, I don't want that.
As the crew begins their house hunting, the first house they visit has a hockey rink in the basement, but it's deemed too nice and too close to the neighbors, who are already snooping in on them. Meanwhile, we get to see Don Vito arriving and enjoying a slice of pizza that's nailed into a cutout character of himself.
Go!
After looking all day, they arrive at the second house featured in the show. Bam had found the perfect property, but only teases the camera. A montage follows showing the moving process. However, while they were packing, Don Vito refused to get up from the sofa, so they ended up deciding to wrap him in shrink wrap and gave him a mustache and left him stuck out in the cold, all while on top of the moving van, while the crew would go inside and eat.
You want the soup of the day or do you want the soup du jour?
The same fucking thing.
The bonus content of the DVD shows the crew destroying a large amount of the furniture with snowmobiles. Phil and Ape began packing, but they bickered about Phil's coupon book.
Half off, more than 50 cents.
Bam, seeking the opportunity to cause torment, tries to burn it, with Phil chasing after him. Dunn, however, gets to it after Phil, and takes it outside to throw in the fire, leading to Phil tackling them in retaliation. Glom then drives Vito away, who is still on the moving trailer, while Rab returns with the moving van, laughing as he usually does. Destruction ensues as they load the van quickly. They are ready to go and make their way to their new lair. While the crew pull out, the mailbox would be attached to Bam's Hummer, as well as that moving van having its door left wide open. They then arrive at the notorious CastleBam, boasting 8 bedrooms, 5 baths, 14 acres, a private road, and notably a mural of a horse. The 4,200 square foot castle includes a lighthouse room and a ladder leading to an attic. The crew then immediately began to claim their rooms, with Vito yet to arrive. Bam, however, found the house design rather hideous, despite Ape liking it.
Please don't. Bam, don't.
Abruptly, we get a surprise appearance from Jess Margera, making his first appearance in Viva La Bam after his long tour with CKY.
I know you're moving in and all, but we're playing a show in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Oh, and you decide to tell us today that, well, moving in. You should go. Screw it, should go.
with Bam deciding to let Phil and Ape do all the work on the house while they are away, including Ape repainting and making the house feel just like home, like it did before.
What?
Ape, this is god-awful.
Bam immediately complained to Ape about the decorations, insisting that he wanted a gothic medieval look. He started to tear down the drapes, and the crew followed suit, throwing furniture out the window and began to burn it, causing over $2,000 worth of damage. Bam then calls his old friend Glom to help work on the house.
I brought the crazy man, Seth Meisterman, to do the interior design.
I got 2 words for you. Let's make this shit happen.
The final design of the house is lavish and stunning. It features a medieval dining area with a purple background and a giant heartagram, with also the presence of Persian carpets, Gothic throne chairs, and gold candelabras. The living room has a beautiful stone fireplace and a couple of leather recliners. Ape initially was left shocked and had mixed feelings about the design, naturally since Bam's style is quite different compared to hers. That night, the CKY crew pranked Dunn by wrapping him in plastic wrap while he sleeps. They then flipped the bed over to wake him, and then walked on top of him as they laughed and left him trapped. CastleBam was an excellent start to the season. It opens a blank slate for whatever possibilities that could happen in the upcoming episodes.
You just gave me a hug.
Dating Don Vito, also known as the Slayer episode. The episode begins with Bam engaging in some unconventional landscaping in the front yard. What I mean is by riding four-wheelers through the mud. April interrupts him saying that they got a call from Slayer.
Slayer's coming tomorrow.
Tomorrow, tell him to come today.
Bam assures Slayer that they can stay at his place and utilize the pirate bar that had yet to be built. He also emphasized to the audience about the importance of knowing rock history. Even though Slayer is a thrash metal band and not necessarily rock and roll, but you know. Bam decides to create that pirate bar that I mentioned and enlists Ryan to help him set up a date for Don Vito that night. Ape complains about Ryan and Dunn by calling them assies.
Ryan, don't you dare walk on the... Wait. Ryan, get off!
Bam then discusses future plans to add a half pipe and instructs Dunn to shower with him.
Let's hop in the shower. Together? Yeah. Jesus.
Oh my God.
I also want to mention here that Bam and Ryan were part of a episode of Loveline. I'm not a big fan of Loveline. It makes me kind of feel uncomfortable. It seems like Bam and Ryan are kind of just in the background. They don't really add anything to it, but I did find this clip to be rather interesting.
Bam, I got a question. I just want to know if April and Phil really do like legitimately get upset, or are they just in on a joke the whole time?
I'd say Phil doesn't really care about anything, so he'll pretty much get over it, but like Ape freaks out about everything. I mean, like in the next episode that's coming on, there was like an oriental rug that was on the ground and we were all muddy, and like she was like, don't go on the rug. So of course me and Ryan go on the rug, and she seriously like lost her mind because we were getting mud on like a $300 oriental rug. We're like
I don't know if you care, but I'm upset with the whole show.
Anyway, Bam plans to put up flyers around Westchester for a concert at the castle, but Phil and Ape warn him that it will attract too many people to their house like last time, something that Bam would get annoyed by.
First one to complain when everybody's bothering you at your house.
Hey, Rob, call up Westchester and tell them to show up.
A montage of the construction in preparation for Slayer's visit began, as they started to build that pirate bar and a half pipe in one of the bedrooms. After a few hours, Bam calls out Rab for only working 20 minutes and slacking off, calling him a loser. Don Vito speaks gibberish, claiming that Bam doesn't make any sense. However, he has to get ready, so he takes off. Not related to this, Dunn takes a nap and he gets farted on. Don Vito is sitting in his car, ready for his test date, but is surprised to see Deco enter the van dressed as his date, completed with a wig. Deco humorously teaches Vito how to woo the ladies by being the test dummy in the situation.
I just go like that. Ah, you always see me the fucking like that.
Vito suggests going to a strip club but opts for a 10-cent wing joint for the date location. The bonus features show Vito not taking the date seriously, and he ends up paying for the meal for both of them.
Where's the best place to take a girl? A nice girl.
Vito tries to romantically feed Deco wings, imitating kissing, and the date concludes with strawberry cheesecake and a nice sweet kiss on the hand.
How you doing, baby? You're a nice girl.
The CKY crew then searches for a real date for Vito, asking various women around town if they are interested in him, but they fail. Nobody had any sexual desire for Vito.
Sniff, he smells like hoagies.
Back at home, April is painting Slayer's room. She mentions her liking for heavy metal, like Metallica and Def Leppard, but Bam insists Slayer is heavier than Metallica, playfully explaining the difference. Oh man, times have really changed, guys. The definition of metal nowadays is definitely not the definition of metal back then. And it also seems that Bam doesn't really clearly know what's heavy music when he tries to boast about it to Ape in this scene. But anyway, on a more comical note, they also attempt to paint Bones gold while Bam calls Dunn out.
Hey, my name's Dunn. What I like to do is, wake up and just fuck everything up.
Bam finally sets up 3 dates for Vito, equipping him with a wire to give advice. The first date leaves early after Vito compliments her breasts and asks her about her tattoos in the wrong places. On the second date, Vito immediately salutes the woman and compliments her ass. However, due to the constant stream of noise of the boys talking over each other, Vito then mentions that he has voices in his head and he got shot in the ass with a poison dart.
I got shot in the ass with a poison dart, and now I'm in love. Go!
Resulting in the second rejection. For a third date at a local coffee shop, Vito pulls a beer from his jacket and compliments the woman's breasts once again, and he gets way too touchy here. It then is established that this is a new Vito mannerism of giving a gentle slap on the forehead of the girls, saying that he's hypnotizing them.
Vito, that was a terrible first time.
A coffee shop.
Vito then accidentally spills beer all over said date, who retaliates by splashing coffee onto him. Overnight, the crew, mostly Rab, completes the pirate-themed decorations. Rab did this by painting a lot of non-pirate items like baseball gloves and cleaning products gold. Finally, Slayer arrives, announced by Rake 3 times. Slayer presents themselves as the tour begins, showing off the new features of the house. The pirate bar opens and Slayer plays a live concert in front of a cheering crowd. Moshing ensues and Vito gets up on stage. The episode concludes with a nostalgic reference to the Waltons.
Dave, shut the fuck up. Good night.
All in all, this episode was funny, mostly because I think Don Vito's performance, who is naturally hilarious with his chaotic, spaz-like outbursts. The sight of seeing a young Slayer perform at anybody's house is also remarkable. This was a real concert that even has actual video of it from a visitor perspective. The collaboration between Bam and Slayer was very impactful here. They even shared the cover of the May 2004 edition of Revolver magazine. This edition of the magazine featured the yearly readers poll, with some very intriguing results. Notably, Metallica made the spots on both best and worst bands. Additionally, Linkin Park's Meteora was ranked lower than POD's self-titled album. And I kind of want to tangent off this for a sec. While POD's album isn't bad, I appreciate their more diverse sound after Satellite. They definitely drifted away from nu metal, exploring a more melodic alternative direction and embracing a positive perspective in their messaging and spirituality. In contrast, Meteora kind of expressed greater emotional intensity and more memorable melodies, which to me marked the finalization of the nu metal era. This sentiment wasn't universally accepted though. Meteora faced criticism for sounding too similar to Hybrid Theory and became a target for nu metal haters due to the band's overexposure at the time. There's even an article that's featured in this from a journalist that was at this event where the episode was being filmed. And on page 72 of the zine, Bam states, "I knew I didn't want to move out to Los Angeles, or anything like that. I enjoy the fact that I can go to any gas station around here and I know the dude filling my tank. All my friends are here." The article highlights the hybrid of reality and fiction, with the director setting up reaction and establishing shots around Bam's antics. And he goes on to say, "It fuses the familiarity of a sitcom with the pacing of reality television, ultimately allowing the characters to blossom into real people rather than remain victims of Bam's pranks. Perhaps this is why so many kids can relate to him." At the time, Bam was receiving hundreds of letters a day, and interestingly, the Slayer concert actually had the cops show up during the sound check. However, this didn't affect the filming or the concert in general, as Bam was well known by everyone in Chester County by this point. He could just get away with it. Lastly, I want to mention what Bam said in a 2018 interview with Revolver magazine. When responding to the question, "Do you still have CastleBam?" he responded, "I do. Basically, it's 14 acres, and when I think about it, everything has been done there. When I first moved in, I didn't know that I was moving in next door to the Township supervisor. She's this old lady who, the first day I moved in, threw a housewarming party for me with cake and stuff. But I never showed up. Instead, I had Slayer play the loudest concert they have ever heard the first day I moved in. Season 2, Episode 3, Fatboy Faceoff. The episode kicks off with Bam presenting a photo of Phil and Vito as they were kids, mentioning it was their younger and slimmer days, and joking that it's all been downhill from there. After an arm wrestling contest ends inconclusively due to accusations of cheating,
Yeah, you can't re-grip. How you doing? You re-grip. What are you re-gripping? I know, I just gave up. That's cheating.
but Phil defends his actions, saying it was legal, comparing himself to Sylvester Stallone. Bam then proposes a Fatboy Faceoff, with Glom coaching Vito and hyping him up for the event.
You need to hammer down. Get psyched. Get psyched. Yeah, we can do it. We can do it. Come on.
Bam surprises Dunn with a sledgehammer and mentions that he knows what he has to do. Phil and Vito are then introduced to a series of challenges to determine the better and fatter man. They even had matching jerseys for this event.
Man, if I just didn't eat lasagna, I'd have a better shot.
The first challenge was called the Hoagie Hustle, and it involves running around in the snow while hoagies dangle from their backs on a stick. Phil dominates the event, leaving Vito complaining about his knee and the icy conditions. Despite Phil's victory, they ultimately team up to enjoy the hoagies together. The next event is the Chocolate Challenge, but it kinda sounded cringe, so after a few ideas were passed around, Bam suggests naming the game Spin a Slob. They must walk blindfolded to a chocolate cake prize after being spun around. Phil completes the challenge in 1 minute and 27 seconds. Then, it's Vito's turn. He immediately heads in the wrong direction, misunderstanding directions like left, and not understanding what being cold means. After 4 minutes and 10 seconds, Vito finally reaches the cake. Glom then tries to continue to hype Vito up as he's now 2 challenges behind.
You're 2 down. You're 2 down. Because you spell. 2.
They then give Dunn a shot at the chocolate challenge, but he slips and falls. Next up is the Slopsticle course, where they have to start lying on their backs, navigate through a fence and a series of tires, and then eat a whole platter of wings. The two immediately engage in a messy struggle, with Vito initially falling behind, but making a comeback during the wing eating phase. Phil accuses Vito of playing dirty.
How about that race at the end? It seemed Vito played very dirty.
Yeah, he's going back to childhood pranks.
And Deco also asked Vito why he decided to start laying down backwards.
In the back, I don't know what you wanted to do. Nobody told you what to do.
Next up, Deco eagerly prepares for the game show event, while Bam identifies the need for showgirls and assigns Rake to the task. However, Rake protests and insists he'll only do it if Rab does it too. The game show kicks off with a cameo of Markan. Rake, expecting Rab to honor their agreement, is outraged when Rab is dressed up as a Viking instead. Deco, in Americana getup, is hosting the show as he announces that Vito will be playing for his truck, while Phil's nonchalant attitude leads to Ape's precious china cabinet to be put on the line, which is where we see Dunn holding the earlier established sledgehammer. Ape is now furious, particularly because of the cabinet's antique and sentimental value. The contestants are now given questions, with a point awarded for each correct answer and a spin on the wheel for their punishment. The first question, asking for the capital of New Jersey, had all the answers wrong.
Not even one of the answers.
Vito complains about this and incorrectly answers South Jersey, resulting in him having to drink a sardine milkshake, which he does without caring, and grossing everybody out.
They're good.
After another wrong answer, the crew begins pelting contestants with food. For the last question of what animal is best suited to be used as a weapon, Phil correctly answers a swordfish and wins Fatboy Faceoff, allowing Glom to destroy Vito's truck. Vito goes through a wave of emotions. He complains and threatens to call 911, but despite these frustrations, he also notes, well, at least he has collision coverage.
Vito, how are you gonna explain that to the insurance company?
I'm calling it you ran into me.
Ignoring Ape's demand about the status of the china cabinet, Glom proceeds to bring the bulldozer near to it, and he ultimately decides to destroy the china cabinet anyway. Both her and Vito would go out to check the damage, and Vito comes to check and see if it's computer generated. This naturally prompts a reaction from Ape, who chases after Glom. The scene is also underscored with melancholic mathcore and sad piano music. Bam arrives with a new car for Vito, but Vito opts to wait for the insurance company before fully accepting the replacement. Bam then concludes the chaotic events of the episode with a declaration of who the better man really was.
Me.
Season 2, Episode 4, and Season 2, Episode 5 were the Mardi Gras episodes. This French holiday marks the start of Lent and is typically celebrated in areas of the United States with strong French and Spanish influence, such as New Orleans, the key destination for the next 2 episodes. Part 1 begins with Bam and Ryan discussing the new RV they are renting.
Yeah, and being Hawks coming to town, I think we should go on a road trip to Mardi Gras. Yeah!
As Rab recklessly drives the RV. After the intro, Bam wakes up on his half-pipe to the arrival of his old friends, Tony Hawk, Tim O'Connor, Jason Ellis, and Donnie Barley. The group decides to wake Bam up in a chaotic manner. Tim rides the half-pipe, Tony blasts an air horn, and Jason gives Bam a wedgie, with Jen being caught in the middle of this. Bam screams as Jason Ellis completely rips off his underwear.
Let's go to New Orleans and hang out! It's gonna be cool!
In retaliation, Bam decides to wake up Dunn by hitting him with an acoustic guitar. He also kicks and breaks in Dunn's drywall and telling him to get up and get ready for the trip. Dunn calls him a dick and goes back to sleep.
See, now that's not good. Well, you know what? It's your room, so that's your problem.
Glom then arrives, splattering the RV with mud and drifting in the mud-saturated yard, honking the horn and informing them that he has arrived. Vito admires the idea of Mardi Gras, thus tagging along. The gang also reveals a mini-ramp hooked to a trailer so that they can skate at rest stops. Since Dunn is still sleeping though, Bam has decided to ditch him, and thus he has to take a motorbike instead. As Ape approaches to say goodbye, Bam reveals that she is coming along, despite having to work.
No, aren't you coming?
What?
Are you coming?
No, I don't think we're coming.
Hey, they are.
2 RVs set off, one with Bam and his skate buddies, and the other with everyone else. Surprisingly, no deco in this episode. The road trip takes 20 hours total, and Rab complains about needing to use the bathroom immediately at the first stop.
Here, shave me up, dude.
Is that a requirement?
And ends up using Bam's RV's toilet, which is only used for number 1.
No number 2s.
When Bam learns about Rab's mishap, he declares revenge. A montage would occur and show a mile count in front of an ever-sleeping Don Vito. Dunn finally awakes and walks outside to discover a note. Dunn, groggy, tapes the note to his chest and leaves for Mardi Gras. The boys create a plan to get back at Rab by creating a homemade mayo bomb out of condiments and gherkins. The bonus footage shows the crew gathering ingredients, and Glom comically being oblivious to their plot.
It's funny how he was talking to us right near the bombs without actually knowing that we were holding bombs that were directed at him.
This monstrosity of a projectile was ready for its journey, to be inserted into the microwave of the opposing RV. However, a sneaky Rab noticed the mayo and returned to base to give a message. Glom then reaches out to them and points at a picture that says surveillance and saying that they were caught in the act of what they were doing.
2 sauces, we know what you're up to.
Hey man, all we do is make sandwiches here. I don't know what, we're a peaceful RV.
It's on, dude.
Easily one of the funniest bits for me so far, and it's just really sad that they didn't put this scene in the episode. At a rest stop, Tony sneakily plants the bag in the microwave, while Vito and Tony have an awkward yet funny conversation.
What's that?
You're doing enough skating. Let's just go to Mardi Gras.
I know, we skate everywhere we go.
Vito, frustrated by the skateboarding delays, realizes the bag in the microwave, and that it's not popcorn. So his anger meter begins to rise.
Oh, wait, what did he put in there? I don't know, but it's not popcorn. That's what it's not.
Vito starts complaining loudly and alerts Glom, who finds the mayo bomb, gets angry, and throws it at Jason Ellis. Jason Ellis then grabs the other mayo bomb, runs across the parking lot, and throws it at Glom. Glom retaliates by vomiting purposely in Bam's RV, and they have to clean it up. So back to Dunn. He rides his motorcycle at a top speed of 31 miles per hour. He pulls into a bike shop and gets it modified to reach a top speed of 38 miles. The crew then stops in Athens, Ohio to visit a local skate park, much to Vito's annoyance, who blames Tony for delaying his first time at Mardi Gras. Bam continues to enjoy the local park, until finally being confronted by Vito.
Bam, come on, everybody's been waiting for you all this time, hurry up!
Bam starts attacking Vito with his jacket. Bam then mentions to the camera how behind schedule they are, as the 2 teams continue pranking each other, making the RVs dirtier and stinkier. However, peace is temporarily made when Glom gives Bam a highway high five as the RVs travel at top speed. Bam gives Dunn a call to check in. Dunn is now in Maryland, being doubted by Bam for his chances of making it. And Rab also talks shit too. Dunn pitches a ride on a pickup truck, befriending and petting a chicken along the way. Glom suggests a detour to Skatopia, a 16-hour delay that angers Vito immediately. The episode ends with Bam teasing that next week's episode will be even better. Part 2. The trip to Mardi Gras continues as Bam informs everyone that Mardi Gras ends at midnight, just as they approach Skatopia, which is in the opposite direction, with no idea on the location of Dunn, or even if either of them will make it in time. Glom enthusiastically describes the skate park as an iconic anarchist skating playground, and he is correct. Skatopia is located in Rutland, Ohio, and its creator, Bruce Martin, wanted to create a DIY skate park free from societal constraints and commercial influences. The park is known for a communal living setup where visitors and residents share responsibilities and resources, displaying its counterculture aspect that attracts local punks, artists, and skaters alike. However, this is also met with stories of violence, drug use, and lawlessness, which makes the park much more than just a skating hotspot. There has been countless articles and documentaries showcasing the park that are worth learning about, especially for skateboard historians, which was why Glom emphasized the importance of visiting the park in this episode. The skate montage here is particularly impressive, showcasing the skills of Bruce pre-accident of 2009, where Bruce tragically suffered a traumatic brain injury caused by a tire exploding in a tire shop near Skatopia. The accident left him in a coma for 6 weeks, and since then, he had no longer been the same. On a more positive note, the skating shots here played with Clutch in the background was absolutely sick, ending with Tony Hawk landing a Mick twist, being the first to do so. Meanwhile, Vito lies on the couch, ranting about Bam, always doing whatever he wants, one of my favorite Vito complaints in the series.
They come to all these stupid places and I gotta hang around here. Jesus Christ, I'm sleeping and I wake up in Mardi Gras hoping he does whatever the fuck he wants.
Bam notices a 16-foot gap that he wants to jump. Only a select few have made it. He epically gets score for the gap, earning his special bar in the process, as Tim O'Connor cheers, saying, "Look at the millionaire!" The journey towards Mardi Gras finally resumes at 10 a.m., with hopes of arriving by 7:30. Meanwhile, Ryan finds himself alone with his bike in the middle of nowhere, continuing his quest. While passing through Georgia, the crew makes a 2-hour pit stop for more skating, which once again irritates Vito. Frustrated with his constant complaining, Bam and Glom decided to prank him. They present Vito with a jar of dude eggs, claiming they are pickled eggs. Vito is hesitant but ultimately eats one. Curious, he asks what kind of eggs they are. Upon peeling back the price tag, he discovers they are dude eggs and becomes upset, exclaiming,
They're dude eggs. They're fucking people's balls that die and they fucking protest. Holy crap! They're dude eggs. What the hell? You gave me one of them, you motherfucker? Call that number. I'll use my phone if you don't call. I just want to know where's your phone.
The bonus footage extends this scene, showing Vito calling to ask what they are. He discovers that they are actually quail eggs and realizes he was just confused. The journey to Mardi Gras once again continues with more chaotic antics. Rake decides to bring along 2 Australian roadies to join the crew, and they engage in a game of strip poker. Bam reveals that Rake is sitting on a Hershey's bar as a prank, and meanwhile, back to Dunn, he decides to get a ride on a private plane to make his way to New Orleans. And now, back to Rake, he gets called out for soiling his pants, causing everyone to burst into laughter and embarrassing himself. The bonus footage shows more of Vito's annoyance with Glom, who repeatedly asks, "Are we there yet?" The adventure takes a serious turn when the police decide to pull over the 2 RVs. Bam explains they were held for an hour because Glom had hung himself out the window. After this delay, they finally arrived in New Orleans right around 9 p.m. But Dunn had already arrived. After an hour and a half and skating through every gas station on the way, the crew finally made it. Bam decides to rent a limo for the party, and they even get a police escort, allowing them to skip hours of traffic. The group arrives to cheering crowds, especially for Don Vito, as thousands of people filled the streets celebrating. It was kind of insane how lit up the streets were with the Margeras walking down the street here. They settled on a balcony and looked at the sea of partiers. Rab enthusiastically joins with a bunch of beads, and Bam mentions that he loves throwing them at strangers. Ryan approaches Bam, mentioning he had been there for hours. Bam is both surprised and honored by Ryan's dedication. Jen finally makes a brief first appearance in this episode, and Vito is in the best mood he could possibly be. After the festivities, Bam has one last surprise for Rake after their 4-day trip: wild crabs they acquired from New Orleans. They place the crabs on Rake while he's asleep. Thus, he gets pinched, causing him to freak out. Dunn apologizes but then immediately puts a crab down Rake's pants, prompting more laughter from everyone. In the credits, Bam talks about wiping out while grinding a rail and landing painfully on his nuts. Vito then enthusiastically cheers for it.
I'm glad you hurt your nuts. I was actually praying. Now you can't walk. You gotta go to Mardi Gras. There's no choice if there's any time left.
The Mardi Gras 2-parter was definitely a fun watch. The rambunctiousness left me laughing at the antics of the two groups. When I honestly think of Tony Hawk and the other pro skaters, I picture them presenting themselves as professionals. This, of course, is a limited perspective, and I'm reminded of the lifestyle that they all live. Skating in itself is a subculture. It's a lifestyle that's grounded in an element of playfulness that goes beyond just the sport of skateboarding. These two episodes showcase the more fun side of the sport. Pranks and free-spirited behavior are a part of that culture, influencing anyone involved in that scene, including Bam and his friends. It is sad not to see Deco in this episode, and it's interesting that Jen is becoming less relevant in the show compared to season 1. Viewers will start to pick up on the status of her relationship with Bam metaphorically through watching the series going forward. Season 2, Episode 6, Community Disservice. Community Disservice kicks off with an unconventional scene as the crew takes to playing hardball right in the middle of the dining room, with Deco serving as the umpire with exaggerated eyebrows. Tensions escalate when Dunn accidentally shatters Bam's mirror, alerting Ape to come downstairs. Ape immediately starts to complain and is upset by the condition of the house.
Come on! Get up! Give me the ball! Give me the ball!
Bam seizes control of the ball and throws it at Ape, and then repeatedly yells, "You're out." Amidst the chaos, Phil makes his entrance, and Bam wastes no time in inviting him up to plate. Phil breaks some shit, and then gets a successful hit. Phil eagerly dodges the ball being thrown back at him and scores a home run. However, after this victory, Phil started to complain, expressing his frustration over the 20-minute walk he endured due to a packed parking lot. In response, Bam promises to designate a parking spot just for Phil as a good deed, and he's not stopping there. Bam pledges to carry out 4 additional acts of kindness for others. Ape is tasked with completing 5 tasks of her own, facing the consequence of eating a bowl of cereal. Ape proposes that if she wins, she wants to redecorate one of the rooms in a Laura Ashley style.
What the hell color's that?
Kind of like a country French.
No, dude, that's why I'm escaping the hole from before, because I'm so sick of this.
Much to Bam's initial reluctance, he ultimately agrees. Meanwhile, Don Vito pulls up, and Bam offers Vito services to Ape, but Ape is bothered by the idea. Bam gathers the crew to discuss their respective deeds, which include benefiting the public, the environment, children, the elderly, and our man Phil.
And the elderly.
The CKY crew cheer as they roll out. During the planning, Ape decides to show her appreciation to Phil by giving him a nice honorary haircut. Bam then unveils a designated parking spot dubbed Fatboy Phil, but Vito's vehicle occupies the attended space. Bam then takes drastic action, enlisting Glom to tow Vito's car, resulting in it being flipped over. And, of course, Vito was outraged.
Yo, if you would have left the keys in the car, we could have moved it for you, but you didn't.
Ape takes a different approach, seizing Bam's shirts that was found in his closet to donate to the kids at the local skate park, demonstrating her own brand of generosity. Bam also had an act of generosity planned for the children of Westchester. He wanted to create a half pipe and rented a cement truck for the job. They parked at an Ace Hardware store to pick up some tools, but Dunn, still outside, accidentally released a large amount of cement in the middle of the parking lot. When the store owner found out, he demanded that the cement be cleaned up by morning. Instead, come morning, they decided to get back at that shithead store owner by constructing a cement ramp right in front of the hardware store.
Thanks, Bam!
Thus successfully completing their goal. This scene obviously was staged, everything seems fake here, but the crew's playful acknowledgement of its fakeness kind of adds a layer of irony, and I think it just makes it funny again. But back at home, Bam confronts his parents and boasts about winning. However, upon realizing their act of generosity, Bam races to his room and discovers all of his clothes are missing, and he begins to flip.
Where'd you put my for real?
I gave it to kids!
You gave my shirts to kids.
You said I don't even wear this stuff anymore.
If it's in my drawer in my room, it means that I like it.
Enraged, Bam demands revenge, grabbing a paintball gun and start opening fire on his parents, who seek shelter in Ape's car. The next scene, Ape is shown at a retirement home, engaging in a heartwarming act of reading to the elderly. Meanwhile, Bam zooms in on an ATV, discussing plans to contribute to the environment by transplanting trees. He does this by running the tree over and transporting it to the retirement home Ape is volunteering at, thus killing 2 birds with 1 stone. As digging commences, the elderly onlookers appear bewildered by what's going on, prompting Bam to make a pretty edgy joke.
The old people in these trees have one thing in common. What? They're both going in the ground soon.
Don't you dare say that!
Transitioning to the Margeras, they are cleaning up trash along the roadside. Vito, after a brief stint of labor, decided to tap out early, claiming community service is a pain in the ass and it's supposed to be a punishment meant for prisoners. Bam arrives on the scene, offering his assistance and swiftly taking charge of the accumulated garbage and packing it straight into his Hummer. He then warns Vito and leaves. Back at home, Bam orchestrates a celebratory moment, presenting chalices and champagne to mark their victory. The CKY crew recounts their accomplishments and tally up the score. Ape, however, asserted that they did a lot more work presenting her accomplishments. Bam, unwavering in his stance, asserts their final victory and prompts Ape to fulfill her end of the deal by eating that damn bowl of cereal. The scene then transitions to reveal a giant pool filled with Fruit Loops and milk, resembling a giant bowl of cereal. Deco emerges from within the milk, and everyone eagerly jumps in. Ape is then nudged into the pool and ultimately joins in on the fun. They all have a good time, until Rab peed. The following day finds Vito watching television in his room, when Bam abruptly dumps a heap of trash into his space, citing it is a part of their community service duties. He then closes the door on Vito and wraps up the show. In a fleeting moment, the camera pans to capture the fresh presence of Brandon Novak, making a very brief yet first appearance on the show. Community Disservice offers a glimpse into Bam's more self-centered nature, highlighting his competitive and defiant attitude. While Ape's deeds were impactful and commendable, Bam's actions were more destructive and didn't directly benefit anybody but himself. At least the bowl of cereal prank was more lighthearted and not necessarily a direct attack on Ape this time. It just felt odd that Bam won a community service challenge without actually performing any meaningful community service. Season 2, Episode 7, Treetop Casino. Treetop Casino kicks off with a nod to Arbor Day, as Ape creatively places a rosemary sprig on eggs and pancakes to symbolize the tree.
I'm not eating this, it has trees on it.
However, Bam's disdain for the holiday prompts him to venture outside. Instead of planting a tree, Bam has decided to remove one. Ape, noticing the noise, approaches the window, while Jen can be seen with her, expressing her disappointment and frustration at Bam's behavior. Ape confronts Bam.
You're supposed to plant trees, not pull them down!
We're gonna build something with the trees we cut down.
Trying to find a way to creatively use the fallen lumber, Glom proposes repurposing the torn tree to create a tree fort, capturing Bam's interest to create a Treetop Casino. Bam begins asking Phil for permission.
Why wouldn't I?
Seeking to test the tree's durability, Bam decides to assess its strength by suspending Vito's car from its branches. They approach Vito, who is gullible enough to show Bam the shape of his key. They then take the key from him and steal his car, and take it to the branch's location. Vito protests vehemently, dismissing the endeavor as stupid reindeer games. They then hook the car up and hang it from a tree.
Today's Arbor Day. Now look at my car, it's up a tree.
Bam finally agrees to lower the car, but does so by cutting the wire, inadvertently damaging Vito's vehicle in the process. Undeterred, Bam shifts his focus to brainstorming additional ideas, including zip lines and a wrestling ring. Determined to bring his visions to life, he decides to hire some wrestlers and even installs an ATM for quick cash access. The casino's construction process begins with a zipline test, during which Dunn becomes the reluctant guinea pig.
I'm not your guinea pig.
I think you are today.
They attempt to test the zipline using watermelons first. Despite initial hesitations and some wild shenanigans like a watermelon being dropped on Rake's head, Dunn ultimately goes for the plunge, landing in a prickly bush. Meanwhile, at the airport, Rab welcomes Leatherface and the Executioner, with Leatherface doing all the talking while the Executioner communicates through edited-in growls.
How's your fight?
Executioner and Leatherface are pro wrestling stuntmen from Sacramento, California. They are more actors than actual active pro wrestlers. While information on Executioner is scarce, Leatherface has a fascinating background in the CKY-verse. He was trained by Tonga Kid, aka Sam Fatu, He is part of the extensive Samoan wrestling family, which means he's the brother of Rikishi and Umaga. Leatherface has starred in a lot of weird, obscure acting roles, with the most notable and odd being Smosh's 2013 Ultimate Assassin's Creed 3 song. Leatherface, whose real name is Telly Blackwood, is also known for Off the Hook Network, a Jackass-style skit show that released its own DVD. Some of the skits are well produced and evoke an earlier era of YouTube. Telly Blackwood remains good friends with the Margeras, Raekwon, and the Bloodhound Gang today. Additionally, he has also been an advocate for legalizing ferrets in California. Lastly, the two starred in Bloodhound Gang's 2005 music video for Untiz Untiz Untiz. The song mocks club culture as a whole, with humor, sexual innuendo, and references to the catchy repetitive dance beats characterized by club music. Upon arrival, they meet Ape, who graciously prepares tea for them. As the rest of the crew arrives, Vito comments on the upcoming wrestling match, questioning the toughness of the wrestlers.
Some of you look that tough though. Look, what the hell's that?
When Leatherface and Executioner engage in a brutal fight inside the house, wreaking havoc and causing damage. Vito's complaints resulted in him being slapped by Dunn with a pair of gloves. Soon Leatherface joined in, and then Bam, whipping Vito out of the house for his ignorance. The next morning, Bam is visibly upset over Vito's actions and the subsequent damage to the pirate bar, which took hours to clean up. Bam stages his anger by having the crew hold him back as if he's ready to fight Vito. They then approach Vito and tell him that he is wrestling and throw him a bag of clothes.
Let's make a Vito sandwich.
Bam continues this bit by lunging towards Vito while having Rab and Dunn hold him back. Vito is then outfitted with a mask slated to face off in the main event. The crew then proceed to test out the wrestling ring, with Deco and Rab practicing moves on Rake while Bam tests the zipline. Meanwhile, work continues on the casino, with slots and a roulette wheel being added. As the sun sets, Fast Eddie's casino finally opens, coinciding with Arbor Day celebrations.
Ow! Fast Eddie's is open, I tell you! We're gonna take everything, so come on in and gamble. Your kids, your car payments, we'll take the underwear off your back!
Fast Eddie, betrayed by Deco, sets the stage for the wrestling match, where Glom rolls a die to determine if Dunn is going to wrestle tonight. And of course, he won. Executioner enters the ring and starts talking shit about CKY, and grabs CKY merch and rubs it on his ass. Executioner dominates the match. However, Dunn does make a comeback and get a hold of him. It was then time for Vito and Phil to enter the ring, and they duke it out with Leatherface and Executioner, and even scored themselves a pinfall. Bam intervenes, sabotaging them with the zipline and leading to a free-for-all as everyone joins in the wrestling mayhem, declaring Arbor Day as their new favorite holiday, putting this episode to a close. And now for the finale of Season 2, the Demo Derby. In this episode, Bam and Deco talk to the camera through a car window. Bam reveals that they've calculated there are over 172 parts to the car, and their plan is to remove every single part and lay them out over 100 yards of land. And you already know that we're talking about Don Vito's car. They demolish it completely and even set it on fire, all while Clutch could be heard in the background. Phil initially comes out to defend Vito, but ends up joining in on the destruction. By the end, the car is just an unrecognizable mess.
We got it!
As punishment for losing the bet, Ryan has to break the news to Vito.
Give me another car, I'm tired of it.
Furious, Vito demands a new car since this is the third one he's lost. Bam suggests trading in the unrecognizable demolished car, so they do this by heading to Miami Motors and pick out a fresh new vehicle for him.
These cars are so cheap, we should just buy all of them.
Sending Phil and Vito in to do the paperwork. Meanwhile, the crew then spots a conveniently placed dump truck full of fertilizer. They grab a bag and dump 50 pounds of it into Vito's trunk. Bam notices a nearby fish market, sends Deco to go buy a salmon, which they place in the back seat with a cigarette in its mouth. When Vito and Phil get in the car, he immediately asks,
"Why does it stink?"
Because you're in it.
As they begin to drive, Phil also notices the smell and starts to blame it on Vito.
Did you get a shower today or anything?
Yeah, well.
Vito initially blames on the old car smell, but eventually finds the fish in the back. Bonus footage shows an extended version of this interaction. Vito tries to drive, but is clearly frustrated by the smell, as well as the unreliability of the car that Bam just purchased for him. Jump cutting to CastleBam. Bam hits the brakes suddenly, thus causing a multiple car accident. He gets out and starts jumping from hood to hood and approaches Dunn and believes that these cars suck, and he has an idea.
So we should have a crash up derby.
Hell yeah!
While skating at FDR, Bam receives correspondence from Glom, who is in the process of selling Vito's old car parts for money. He then notices a military truck perfect for the Demolition Derby prize. Dunn also calls and mentions the Derby cars are in the shop. Glom, growing impatient, ultimately just buys the truck, and Bam banks into the vert ramp as Jen says,
Nardog dropping, aka Batto dropping.
Dunn prepares their demo cars by smashing the glass and making other improvements to enhance aerodynamics and overall safety. For the next scene, Rake plays the role of a crash test dummy, testing the conditions of the newly bought suits funded by Vito's old car parts. They do this by throwing a bunch of shit at him and then spraying him with a fire hose. Rake loses his pants as a result of this. To further test the durability of these derby cars, Rake goes to the Treetop Casino zipline, although Ape is baffled about what they are trying to prove.
Wouldn't you be testing the suit for, like, flammable liquid?
Good call.
No.
Next test.
This, however, didn't lead to anything in the episode. I think MTV stepped in here. In the next scene, the CKY crew dumped a bunch of dirt inside the house, setting up a demonstration for the arena design, completed with a remote control cars and even a tank. Bam notes that they don't have enough space for the derby and will have to relocate.
Look what Ape's gotta clean up! It's enough.
The next scene presents the 4 vehicles that are going to be present for this event. Bam's tank, which features a camouflage paint job and a mounted turret. Dunn's Cream Dream, which is designed like a polka-dotted ice cream truck completed with an ice cream cone on top. Glom's Insecurity Mobile, which is painted like a security car with police colors. And lastly, Rab's Space Caddy, which has a futuristic chrome car aesthetic equipped with ray guns and an antenna. Vito, complaining about not having a car, is presented with Vito's number 2 car, which is a ship-based themed car, completed with corn and toilet paper. Bam explains the design, explaining that it's a metaphor based on the fact that every single car he gets Vito just ends up calling it a piece of shit. So it's time for the games to begin, and the rules are simple. The last car running within the given arena wins. The winner gets to drive the World War II Deuce and a Half truck. Phil, feeling bad for damaging Vito's car earlier, approaches Vito with a strategy. He suggests that Vito should, at the right moment, hide the car in a discreet location and then snipe the victory at the last moment.
I want to smash him a couple times, bro.
As the derby begins, Jen waves the flag and the cars roar to life. Vito hides his number 2 mobile and waits. The chaos ensues, with Bam's tank ironically losing first, but then he notices Vito is hiding, and ultimately carjacks him to re-enter the contest. Dunn and Rab's cars start to take heavy hits, and Glom goes out of bounds, leaving Vito to be the unexpected winner with his number 2 car. Vito celebrates this victory and re-enters his vehicle, but he complains about the chocolate pudding being smeared inside of his car, and mentions family values for some reason.
Watch your stuff. This has got family values on this stupid stuff. You don't go around putting shit.
In a final prank, Rab takes a chunk of something sus and puts it in the Deuce and a Half truck. Vito drives around in it and notices the mess, and he goes into complete road rage, attempting to run over the group. The episode wraps up with the crew beating Rake with wiffle bats, ending the whole season on a very chaotic, humorous note. So that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes season 2 of Viva La Bam. And overall, I think season 2 was an enjoyable experience. The shift to CastleBam changed the overall aesthetic of the show. Season 1 was shot in one of Bam's childhood homes, which gave it a much more family-oriented suburban sitcom vibe. In contrast, CastleBam immerses us in Bam's ideal environment, completed with gothic furniture, a pirate bar, and even a room that doubles as a vert ramp. We see these new additions evolve and get reused throughout the season, and it reflects a continuous journey and development of CastleBam. Season 2 also starts to show a shift in the presentation of characters. Jen's appearance, for example, was much more minimal and inactive. For instance, in the Mardi Gras episode, she only appears at the end and is absent throughout the entire journey. It's very clear that Don Vito has become the star of the show. Episodes like Dating Don Vito and Fatboy Faceoff, as well as numerous funny Don Vito moments, highlights his eccentric personality. People are naturally drawn to such characters, and Don Vito's spazzing nature and blissful ignorance makes any scene he's part of just entertaining. However, I find that Season 2's bonus content is rather weak. in comparison to season 1. While we get some good extended scenes, there's not really much content being added here. I'm sure there was probably a lot that was filmed that wasn't featured in the DVD, but it's just sad that it's not here. Despite this, the core episodes of season 2 still provide plenty of entertainment and memorable moments. Every episode did not feel like a bore after my second watch, and I will say, the scripted nature of the show is starting to become more obvious over time. Let's jump into season 3. Starting off with season 3, episode 1, Driveway Skatepark. The episode kicks off with Bam and Dunn arriving at CastleBam to check the mail.
Dude, you gotta cement it in. You can't put it in potting soil.
Bam suggests calling Glom for help. Later, Ape notices the mailbox and questions Bam about it.
Well, luckily tomorrow's Saturday, so we don't get
We get mail on Saturday.
Ape then spots a cement truck approaching the property. The cement is dumped haphazardly, leaving Glom to deal with the mess. Bam has an idea to create a skating area called Snake's Way that follows his driveway, with pro skateboarders for the grand opening of it. Bam reveals plans to fly everyone to California to gather memorabilia items for the project. The next day, on Santa Monica Boulevard, the family is having breakfast and discussing what kind of memorabilia to collect. Ape wonders if they should get one significant item or several smaller ones.
No, Ape, just get one thing and be happy. Stop trying to be greedy all the time, get the most.
Vito accuses Ape of being greedy and expresses interest in visiting the Playboy Mansion, though everyone doubts he'll get in. Nevertheless, he insists on going. Bam assigns Rab and Rake to keep an eye on Vito to prevent any trouble, while he, Dunn, and Jen, and also Brandon Novak, go on a search for memorabilia. In the following scene, Vito approaches a random security gate, asking if it's the Playboy Mansion.
10 miles away? Yeah. All right, I'm on my way. Thanks for the help, though.
Dunn and Bam bump into Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters. Bam asks him to contribute something for the cement in his driveway. Grohl takes off his belt and hands it over to Bam. Bam then gives Glom a call, who sarcastically thanks him for leaving him with Deco. Dunn then grabs the phone and claims to be frustrated, and starts to complain about how he's not getting anything done, but Glom just hangs up on him. Vito roams around Hollywood while Ape and Phil embark on a celebrity tour. Back at home, Glom notices a car blocking the driveway where the skate park will be. You can guess whose car this is. Bam advises him to pour cement over the car so that they can do tricks off of it.
Listen, I can't deal with this driveway scenario right now because I have Hollywood on the other line, so goodbye.
Bam and Dunn continue their quest at Tommy Lee's place, where Tommy Lee himself gives them 2 drumsticks and a snare drum. Meanwhile, Rake and Dunn continue with Vito as they go into a clothing store and dress Vito in a funny shirt. In the bonus features, we see Vito going on a food tour, munching on a slice of pizza, visiting a Philly cheesesteak shop for a nice hoagie, and then also a taco shop.
I'm gonna say, Playboy Mansion now. Got directions? No, we just get that.
Bam and Dunn nervously pull up to Compton S. Terry's house. Dunn tells Bam to keep the car running, but they both have to go in. Joined by an awkward Brandon Novak, they approach Terry, get patted down, but Terry is ready to chill. He takes them to a video shoot where they meet Shay, Chad, and Pharrell from Nerd.
Well, there's a group of people.
Yeah, they're gardeners.
Meanwhile, Ape and Phil actually visit Adam Sandler's house, where a movie crew member presents them with Adam Sandler's golf balls that he used in Happy Gilmore. Bam and Dunn then visit the Bishop himself, Don Magic Juan, to receive a pair of Snoop's signed Converse shoes for Snake's Way. It turns out the DVD rip for this episode excluded a scene where Jack Osbourne was supposed to appear. In the original footage, he gave Dunn and Bam a smashed watch.
I don't know the reason for that was, but alright.
Now it's modern enough.
Vito, Rab, and Rake finally arrive at the Playboy Mansion, and Vito tries to get Rab to climb the fence, but then they are interrupted by a rock that has an intercom connected with security.
Yeah, sorry, I can't do that. No, my nephew was here. You have to yell. I'm not yelling.
They deny Vito's entry, and he begins to freak out, saying that he has a subscription and therefore entitled to enter. Rake then calls over Bam, who shows up and mentions he knows the password. After saying it, which is cutely censored for TV, they are granted entry. Turns out I wanted to look up and see what this password was, but I ended up just like running into a couple forum posts of people discussing about it on like around the time this aired. Some people believe this was like a real way to get into the Playboy Mansion. Bam tells Vito that he's a safety hazard and duct tapes him to a wheelchair. Inside, Playboy bunny Holly Madison approaches the crew. They leave Vito lying on the ground, while Bam enjoys himself by jumping on a trampoline until he gets bored. The bunny eventually gives him an autographed copy of Hef's Little Black black book. Vito tries to hug the bunny but touches her inappropriately and gets banned from the Playboy Mansion. At dinner, Bam discusses their haul and announces it's time for the final phase. They return home with the crew plus Terry to see Glom's creation of Snake Way. Vito notices his car encased in cement and gets mildly upset. Danny Way, Chris Markovich, and Colin McKay were all pro skaters that casually skated on Snake's Way that day. The episode concludes with a pretty good montage of the building process and, of course, skating, which features the memorabilia they collected in California. The crew uses an ATV to cruise around the course, while Ape and Phil review the collected items and introduce it to the audience. Bam then proudly claims he outdid himself, but Dunn retorts that Bam didn't do anything. Brandon Novak has expressed his frustrations with the MTV producers over his presence in the filming of this episode, as mentioned in chapter 52 of his second memoir, Streets of Baltimore. Due to his history of stealing and using drugs during the filming of Haggard, Novak wasn't trusted by the crew and was left out during nights of partying. When it became known that he was a recovering junkie, the MTV staff would actually purposely leave him out of shots and accuse him of stealing. Bam, however, felt obligated to include Novak as a character in Viva La Bam, almost as a reward for staying sober. Despite this, MTV staff continued to forget to include Novak in the script or as a part of the overall story. In this episode, Bam had enough and demanded that Novak be included. Novak writes, "It's several weeks later, May 2004, and today is my big day. The producers of Viva La Bam have arrived with the video cassette. I eagerly wait to see myself on the TV screen." Wait, what the fuck? In the Hollywood Boulevard segment, I'm framed out of every shot. At Tommy Lee's studio, I'm not even on the camera. In the Playboy Mansion scene, I'm just a blurry, grainy figure hanging out in the background. I'm not a part of the story. I don't have any dialogue. It's as if I've been erased from existence. When the show is over, the producer proudly announces, "This episode kicks ass, doesn't it?" Novak had reached the most depressed point in his life post-sobriety. Pro skater and old skate pal Colin McKay, who was featured in this episode, couldn't even recognize him when Brandon approached him. He just gave a depressed look of his own, aware of what had happened to Novak and the potential he had lost, all for the needle. Novak at this time was on a tight leash. Everyone around him lost faith and trust in him, except for one of his closest friends, that being Bam. Season 3, Episode 2, Uncivil War. The episode begins at CastleBam, where Bam and the crew recklessly drive their Jeep, energetically discussing their plans to use a potato gun.
It's a potato gun! Dude, chill out, man. Whatever. You can put anything in it. You can put an orange in it if you want.
The crew then takes cover and begins firing at each other with these launchers. Don Vito notices the commotion and starts to approach them. In a mischievous move, Bam throws a potato and then mentions grabbing Vito's watch to launch it. He persuades Jen to quickly retrieve the watch and she complies. With Vito's watch in hand, they launch it into the woods, laughing as Vito protests and the crew begins searching for it. The search leads to a mud pit where Bam claims the watch had landed. Bam pushes Glom into the mud. As Glom flounders, he notices a cannonball hidden in the muck. The crew then speculates about its origins, linking it to the nearby Brandywine battlefield, which is only 2 miles away. Bam finds the watch and returns it to Vito, now covered in mud.
Oh my god, that's a real thing!
Vito doesn't think it's real.
The Glom then drops the cannonball into Bam's untreated 36-degree pool, and they challenge Vito to retrieve it. Rab laughs as Bam offers Vito $500 to jump in and grab the cannonball. Without hesitation, Vito strips down and jumps in but fails to retrieve the cannonball. Refusing to jump back in again, Vito starts drying himself off and getting dressed, but Bam then offers the challenge to Phil, with Vito suggesting that maybe they could split the money. Phil accepts this challenge, dives in, and successfully retrieves the cannonball. Bam declares that Phil wins the money, while Vito gets nothing. Vito, feeling cheated, grumbles at being ripped off once again.
Fuck, everything around this place is messed up.
Bam and the crew excitingly drive to an antique shop, where the shop clerk confirms the validity of their cannonball by cross-referencing it with another cannonball in the shop. Bam then spots an antique cannon and eagerly offers to buy it. Back at CastleBam, Deco and Rake are playing in the arcade, while Phil asks,
"Where's Bam?"
I don't know.
Meanwhile, we find that Bam and Dunn decide to throw a party like it's 1899 by pulling the main power line, plunging the house into darkness and confusing everyone. Bam, equipped with night vision, films the chaos. Dunn randomly throws a cake at Vito, covering him in icing.
My eyes are covered with icing.
Bam announces that they no longer can use power and they must resort to horses and buggies. The bonus features include an extended version of this scene, which I actually really enjoyed.
Vito, go find 2 sticks outside so we can rub them together, start a fire.
Stick 2 sticks up your ass. I ain't gonna look for nothing.
Vito, annoyed and feeling inconvenienced by this, decides to leave, complaining that he has places to be and people to meet. However, his car appears to be gone, and in the next scene, Vito is back, grumbling about the bathroom situation. Everyone continues to laugh at Vito's detailed complaints, while Bam tells him to just wait until tomorrow. The next day, the sound of marchers wakes everyone bright and early. Phil opens the door to find Civil War reenactors outside, and Bam tells everyone to stop complaining and invite the reenactors into the castle.
I ordered a Confederate army. Why? Because we're living in the olden days.
The Civil War reenactors of about 200 made their way to the backyard, setting up for their reenactment, which includes digging a latrine.
God, what year do you think we're in right now? Think about it.
17 something.
On the third attempt though, Rab finally gets it right, but he still gets pushed. Later, Vito asks where his car is. Bam explains that Vito just doesn't get it. They are living in the olden days now, and he must use a horse and buggy for transportation. In the bonus scenes, it's revealed that Vito's car is locked in the barn, and the door is open just enough so that Vito can't squeeze through, but Bam can. Bam removes the steering wheel and hands it to Vito, further complicating his efforts to get his car back.
Car, you dummy. Well, here's my steering. I'll drive away like this. Okay. See you later.
Vito grabs the cannonball lying on the ground and departs, heading to Antonio's, sarcastically wishing Bam a nice weekend. Ryan notices the missing cannonball and Bam assures him they'll get it back. The crew follows Vito downtown, and they do this by having a horse and buggy sit on the hood of Bam's Hummer. When they arrive at Antonio's, the crew confronts Vito about stealing the cannonball. Vito insists he took it because he's owed $500. The crew then easily takes the cannonball back from him, ensuring the reenactment can proceed without further issues.
We're playing games.
Such as blanket tossing. They successfully launch Bam, Ryan, and even Ape, but they had a little bit of a struggle at launching Phil, who was able to knock over quite a few of them. When Vito returns, he starts complaining, saying that they are all part of an idiot club. Bam points to a tiny tent and tells Vito that's where he'll be sleeping. That night, the crew celebrates with the reenactors, singing around the fire. Vito continues to complain about the noise and defects to the Union side, taking the cannonball with him. Bam, annoyed, declares that Vito is going to get it. The next morning, the war began. Bam pitches to Vito that if he keeps the cannonball, he'll be rewarded $500. They then lay out the Mason-Dixon line.
I got all these warriors over here going to attack your ass and kill you.
As the war begins, everyone then charges, and Bam immediately runs into Vito. While on the ground, Vito threatens to call the police. Bam leaves but soon returns with his Jeep, driving into the Civil War reenactment to finally find the cannonball. He slams into Vito's tent, steals the cannonball, and wins. Vito then calls them out for using a Jeep in the Civil War.
Can't have a Jeep in the Civil War. You don't make any sense.
We're from the future.
But Bam responds by saying that they are from the future and they are going to fire this cannonball. They drive off, then approach the cannon and fire it, only to hear the sound of a collapsing building. It turns out they accidentally hit the Treetop Casino from the last season. Everyone rushed to the casino. There's also a funny moment where Vito heckles a couple of the war reenactors who are just sort of playing dead on the ground.
You got brain damage? They got you all out of a mental institution?
At the casino, they see the damage caused by the cannonball. Bam remarks on how ruined the Treetop Casino is and decides to throw an after party. Vito complains about the cannonball situation and begins searching for the cannonball in hopes of getting his $500. Back at home, Bam and Rab turn the lights on, revealing the crew drinking moonshine and announcing that it's time to party. The episode ends with Vito now acting like Beethoven, complaining during the no power scene. Uncivil War is considered to be one of the strongest episodes in the entire series. It was mentioned as Bam's favorite episode during the 11th edition of Steve-O's Wild Ride in 2020.
It was just fun because, you know, they were camping outside and it felt like it was the 1800s or whatever it was. Cool. Like yeah, it was rad. Or turning the house into a skate park.
The episode is high energy and packed with genuinely funny moments that even non-Viva La Bam fans could enjoy. The concept is just solid and the comedy really is enjoyable. It makes a standout installment in the series. However, right around this time, the Township of Pocopson, Pennsylvania had enough of this show. On June 16, 2004, BAM received a cease and desist order aimed at ending production of the show, referencing the events taking place at the castle in the past few weeks. Many local residents were concerned that BAM was running a business in a residential neighborhood, which violated a home-based business ordinance law that was established by the township. BAM's response on the matter was, "It's one neighbor who spends all day complaining. The noise is just like hearing someone build a deck or a dog barking. We are no more of a nuisance." However, BAM would eventually reach an undisclosed agreement with the township that allowed filming and editing of video at CastleBam. Changes in production were made to accommodate the ordinance against filming of the show, and that included filming during certain periods of time. Production began focusing more on filming the front of the house, and the crew also installed a plastic tarp hung like a curtain at a gap at the tree line along the edges of the property to almost act as a sound barrier. I'm not joking, this actually was on a news article. It was also worth mentioning that BAM was okay with simply paying the fine and just continuing production as usual. Season 3, Episode 3, Fort Knoxville. Johnny Knoxville is considered to have the highest profile of all the Jackass members. During the time Viva La Bam was being filmed, Knoxville was busy with various Hollywood roles, most notably the 2005 release of Dukes of Hazzard. On April 29, 2004, Bam and Dunn appeared on Loveline and were immediately asked about the last time they had seen Johnny Knoxville.
Johnny Knoxville, too big for MTV now? What's up? You guys talk?
I don't know. Well, I think we're actually meeting up with him after this.
Really?
Yeah, we're gonna go out and have a few drinks. We haven't seen him in like 6 months to like maybe 9 months actually.
Yeah, he's been filming movies.
Yeah, he's big.
Rockstar
He's big time now.
Yeah, I gotta call his agent to hang out.
I bring this up because Knoxville made his Viva La Bam debut in Season 3, Episode 3, Fort Knoxville, another well-known classic in the series. The episode starts early in the morning at CastleBam, with Johnny Knoxville making a surprise appearance. He pulls out an electric saw and begins cutting into Bam's Hummer. He asks Dunn if he wants a turn, and although Dunn initially declines, the next scene we see him sawing into Bam's Hummer as well. Bam finally wakes up to the commotion and looks out the window, surprised to see Knoxville. He immediately asks what Knoxville is doing.
Good to see you again.
After a year, Bam reunites with Johnny Knoxville, who immediately asserts dominance by cutting into Bam's Hummer. It was also mentioned by Troy Miller that this scene was originally supposed to be by the garage, but since the ongoing cease and desist notification, they had to move the scene to the front. Ape and Phil then came out, awed by Knoxville's presence. While Bam tries to cope with the damage to his car, Ape asks if they can put it back together.
Oh yeah, we can put it back together after lunch.
A montage then follows showing the group removing the sawed-out section of the roof to turn the Hummer into a makeshift convertible. Naturally, Bam wants revenge to this, declaring a prank war and enlisting Dunn on the side of Knoxville for what he has done. Bam arrives at the hotel where Knoxville's staying, armed with a copy of his room key and accompanied by the ever-entertaining Don Vito. He instructs Vito to make a mess of Knoxville's room, and Vito gleefully complies, stripping down, putting on a pair of Knoxville's underwear, and getting wing sauce and beer all over the hotel bed. When Knoxville arrives, he is greeted by the sight of Vito, the last person he wants to see. Vito starts heckling Knoxville about,
You used to wear goddamn Fruit of the Moon, and now you're up to Calvin Klein. Oh, bro.
Frustrated by this, Knoxville grabs his things and leaves, snagging Vito's pants on his way out. He runs to the pool and throws Vito's pants in it. Realizing the fate of his shorts, Vito punches out a window, causing $600 in damage. The extended version of this scene reveals that Dunn was also thrown into the pool to retrieve Vito's pants, but he had his $400 phone in his pocket, thus losing it. Don Vito, still fuming, remains at the bar with Knoxville, and in a final messy confrontation, Don Vito rips his wing sauce-soaked boxers, and Knoxville and Bam end up rubbing the sauce into each other's faces. It's pretty crazy. Dunn and Knoxville are driving around in Knoxville's borrowed car, which he drove down from New York to Westchester just to see them.
Is your buddy gonna be pretty pissed when Bam chops it in half?
The three of them arrive at Duffer's for a dinner of destruction, as labeled in text. The group, totaling out to 6, sits down to eat when Bam gets a call and suddenly leaves the table. Dunn begins to smirk, and Knoxville seizes the opportunity to mess with Bam's food, slurping and spitting it back out and dipping his dirty hands into it. Jen, sitting nearby, gags at the sight of it. When Bam returns, everyone stares in anticipation. Bam finally slurps the soup, unaware of Knoxville's tampering. He suggests that they call it even. Bam finally discovers what happened. Bam grabs Dunn's wallet, vomits into a toilet, and then drops the wallet in it. Deco then suggests attaching the wallet to a fishing pole and handing it to Knoxville to follow it and fish it out. Ironically, Dunn didn't really do anything to deserve this. It was all kind of Knoxville. He looks so sad. In the bonus scenes, it was revealed that while Bam pretended to be busy on the phone, it turns out he was also doing a prank on Knoxville. Glom was outside tying the front bumper of Knoxville's borrowed Cadillac to a cemented light post, so when Knoxville attempted to drive away, the bumper snapped off. The next morning, Dunn and Knoxville bring Dunn's motorcycle into Bam's house. They place tacks on the floor near the front of Bam's bedroom door, and they begin to wake him using the motorcycle. Bam comes out, steps on the tacks.
That fucking tack hurts so bad.
Knoxville cheerfully says good morning after that, and departs. Later, Dunn and Knoxville superglue a set of billiard balls in place so that when Bam tries to play, the balls don't move, thus ruining his table. Phil and Ape encourage Bam by pointing out the severity of the pranks. Terry Compton also happens to be there, and Bam, now determined to get even, starts plotting his revenge. However, Knoxville and Dunn were not done. While Bam is sitting outside, Knoxville and Dunn sneak into Bam's pirate bar and set up a bubble machine. Ape hears the noise and reacts, thinking Bam is responsible. Bam hears her screams and rushes to the scene. When he arrives with Ape, she blames him for the mess. Bam denies accountability and is actually quite annoyed by the potential damage. However, the crew, especially Deco, find the bubbles entertaining and fun.
To get back at them, I don't know, take them out and buy like ice cream at a CD or something.
The next day, Dunn reveals that he learned of Bam's fear of snakes during the Mardi Gras episode. Therefore, he had a surprise for Bam. Dunn, with a python, drapes around his neck and approaches Bam. Knoxville holds Bam down as Dunn brings the python closer, making Bam scream like a girl. Dunn places the python on Bam, who becomes extremely upset and manages to break free.
Dude, Peter's gonna come after you if you throw it on me. It's not even worth it.
Bam takes off running, but Dunn chases him and quickly catches up, getting 2 points ahead of him in their prank war. This score is short-lived as Knoxville gets another point, setting up a mousetrap and clipping Bam's ear. By the end of day 2, Knoxville and Dunn steal Bam's credit card to fund a night out with the boys at the bar. They drive through town and they notice that Knoxville's phone number has been doxed on a billboard. They rush to remove the letters, where they meet Bam, who resists, unaware that his own credit card will be paying the tab for the entire bar that night. The bonus content revealed that Don Vito is still on the lookout for Knoxville to exact revenge for the earlier damage, making Knoxville genuinely paranoid.
I hear Don Vito getting off the elevator. Where's that motherfucker?
As Bam steps out for a moment, Knoxville reveals the prank. Bam will be stuck with the bar bill, discovering that he now has to pay, only $850. Knoxville flees laughing. However, as a result of being doxxed, Knoxville ends up with 243 messages, ranging from blessings to hatred, some of which are featured in the bonus scenes.
I would just like to tell you that my son is a huge fan of yours, but I do not appreciate anything that you do. I think you are foul. I think you're disgusting. I think you need to change your ways, mister.
Upon day 3, Bam has just had enough. While at a paint store, he orders the ugliest green paint he could find to vandalize Knoxville's friend's car. They arrive at Knoxville's hotel and smash into the back of the car, dumping the paint while Sean Penn laughs in the background. Bam declares the car is undrivable. Bam bursts into Knoxville's room with paint on his hands, spray painting Knoxville. Knoxville rushes outside to see the extent of the damage. Meanwhile, Bam heads to Snake Way, ties Dunn's bike to his Hummer, and drags it down the private road, bringing the prank war to a draw. Dunn is upset, but Bam extends his hand for a truce.
No, don't do the face.
I didn't do any face.
You just did the face thing. Don't do that.
It is ultimately over. As Knoxville prepares to say goodbye, he attempts one last prank, but Dunn nut-checks him, leading to the final credits. Fort Knoxville is a standout episode. There's just something about Knoxville's aura that makes him naturally funny and photogenic. He clearly is a natural prankster who knows exactly how to set Bam off. It's about time there's an episode of Viva La Bam where Bam finally meets his match. The bonus content for the episode is strong and already more interesting than what we got for Season 2. Absolutely one of my favorite episodes. Season 3, Episode 4, Rockstars. This episode begins with CKY reading the disclaimer, which I thought was neat, kicking the episode off with Bam playing Him on his new jukebox that he purchased, while Phil and Don Vito try to work on Bam's paperwork, clearly annoyed by the loud music.
Just let us, man. Bam, shut the hell up! Boner killer.
Don Vito then arrives and immediately starts complaining about the necessity of purchasing a jukebox, dismissing all the bands, including Iggy Pop, as dopey bands. Vito insists that anyone can be a rock and roll star, but Bam doubts him and challenges him to prove it, dragging Phil into this bet. Vito boldly claims that for $1,000 he will become a rock star. Bam then decides that tonight they will have a karaoke challenge. With that, Vito and Phil return to their paperwork.
If Vito gets a note, he wins in my book, dude.
Note, he can't speak a lick of English.
The bonus features include extended scenes of them hanging up flyers, and also, when they take Phil and Vito to Rex's for karaoke night, they actually took a makeshift dumpster truck that I'm surprised wasn't featured in the episode. At karaoke night, Vito sports a fake mustache, as Bam warns the viewers to either change the channel or brace themselves for the worst thing they'll ever witness.
I marry a woman, stay away from me.
Despite their performance, Phil believes they did a great job. Bam then mentions that they have a lot of work they have to do, and that starting at the butt crack of dawn, they're going to turn Phil and Vito into some rock stars. This includes voice training, dancing, and perfecting their rock attire. The ultimate challenge will be to play live with CKY, with their reward being $1,000 if they succeed. At 6 a.m., Rake, Deco, and Bam prepare to wake up Phil, while Dunn and Rab get ready at Vito's. They attach a mic to Phil, and have the negative feedback of his snoring wake him up. Meanwhile, at Vito's, Dunn and Rab bash on some drums with a strobe light, creating a loud noise and waking Vito. Rab then takes Phil and Vito to their voice lessons. Vito asks for some hot sauce for some reason, and Rab does so, but Vito ends up spitting out the juice into a cup to, I guess, clear his sinuses to make him sing better, I don't know. Amusingly awkward, Vito attempts to sing into the mic.
Row, row, row our boat, down the street.
With Rab cringing at the performance. They then try to master vibrato, with Vito comically shaking his neck fat during this exercise. The duo then heads to a dance studio, where they do stretching exercises and learn to shake and snap. Finally, they are taken to get outfitted, with bonus scenes revealing Vito's constant complaints and Phil's dissatisfaction with the clothing options because they didn't look Elvis enough.
I won't even be able to reach the mic. I'll be singing like this.
Later that evening, exhausted and wanting to watch television, Phil and Vito are interrupted by Bam, who informs them that they are going to go see him live, the best band ever. Bam urges Vito to learn some authentic rock moves, and together with Phil Vallo, they stand in front of the venue where Vallo is assigned to show Vito how to be a full-blown rocker. Backstage, they meet the members of the band, but Bam doubts Vito's rock credentials and jokingly spray paints him green. Jen humorously compares Vito to the Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters, and they all playfully dump beer on him before the show begins. After the show, Bam realizes that their efforts have not been successful in transforming Vito into a rock star, so, while wearing a Hillary Duff shirt, Bam takes Vito and Phil to meet the Bloodhound Gang.
Haven't you ever heard of Bloodhound Gang? There were Greyhound dogs. I don't know Bloodhound Gangs. What do you call them?
Bam implores Jimmy Pop to help them out, and Evil Jared, of course, playfully clips and removes their underwear, while Jimmy Pop explains that Vito needs to learn about the connection that Bams have with each other, and this leads to Bam instructing Jimmy Pop to French kiss Vito live on stage. They also gave Vito a Bruce Springsteen tattoo on his ass. On stage, Jimmy Pop fulfills Bam's request, and full-on French kisses Don Vito live on stage, with Evil Jared holding him down. Bam announces that he's going to present Vito's tattoo to his grandma, who famously called the family crazy back in Season 1. Finally, they are flown to Minnesota for the final challenge, to sing CKY lyrics live on stage. This event took place during the Zoomies Couch Tour at the Mall of America on June 26, 2004. Bam addresses the crowd, informing them about the rock and roll training and asking for their judgment by helping Bam grade them. Phil kicks off the performance by singing Knee Deep, captivating the crowd, while Vito energetically drinks and, dare I say, rocks on stage. Bam then comes out and playfully slaps Phil, leading to Vito's complaining about rock and roll and ultimately storming off. Despite Vito's abrupt exit, they are given a passing grade of a D-. In the next scene, we see Bam dressed up as he presents the $1,000 prize to Vito. However, upon considering all the expenses incurred during this episode, Vito's balance had dwindled, leaving him with only 18 bucks, and Bam welcomes him to the music industry. The next day, Bam brings the family to Mum-Mum's house to reveal Don Vito's tattoo to her, fully aware that it will make her flip out. Pup jokingly calls out Vito for his foolishness, but does so in a lighthearted manner. Mum-Mum is not amused and refuses to even look at the tattoo, expressing a great disdain and frustration. She ends up attacking Bam, clearly upset by the decision. Vito, not really interested in the tension, asks about how many pizzas they're going to be ordering that night. Bam and the cameraman end up getting kicked out of the house, bringing the episode to an abrupt end. Season 3, Episode 5. The Mutiny of the Bam kicks off at CastleBam with Deco dressed as a pirate, sword fighting with Bam. Dunn joins in, and they all playfully destroy the living room. Ape returns home, expecting a peaceful day, only to find the mess and chaos presented in front of her.
We're just joking.
She becomes a new level of upset. She reaches her breaking point and declares that she's done cleaning up after them. She tells Bam off and expressing her frustration and utter resentment. Bam realizes the severity of the situation and calls Ape to gauge her mood. Despite her sarcastic response, Bam offers to kick out either Dunn or Rab to make amends. But Ape is unfazed and doesn't want that. She's ready to just quit altogether. In an attempt to make it up to her, Bam promises to arrange a cruise trip for Ape to relax and pledges to clean up the mess in the living room.
We're gonna clean up the mess, Dunn's gonna rig up a cruise, and then he's gonna move out.
This isn't actually canon. The crew arrives at a pirate ship, and the Margeras are initially confused, expecting a cruise ship.
I pulled some strings for this.
While Ape finds it unconventional, she agrees to give it a try. Vito, however, feels misled about the cruise, initially refusing to board. However, Bam persuades him by appointing him as captain of the boat, and giving him an eye patch to put over his good eye, much to everyone's amusement. Bam doubts Vito's ability to captain the cruise ship and giving him 3 chances to prove himself. If he fails, Bam threatens to start a mutiny.
Boston?
To the Boston Massacre, because people are gonna die.
Bam and the crew prepare supplies for the potential mutiny, while the bonus scenes show Vito comically struggling to navigate the ship and adapt to his new role. When Bam returns, he unleashes a barrage of sailor-like swearing, as Ape refuses to accept Vito as captain, prompting Bam to announce that the boat will stay docked for the night. However, he warns that if circumstances change, they will leave the following morning. That night, Deco comically mentions a peg leg race and begins attacking everyone with his makeshift leg. I really wish we got more of this scene, it was kind of funny. The next morning, despite Ape's objections, the crew sets sail while they're all asleep. Deco, following Bam's wishes, abandons his duties at the wheel, rushes to wake up Vito.
Fine, I gotta wake him up, come down and steer. He should be steering.
Fine, I'll just leave it.
In a humorous attempt to rouse him, they slingshot his eye patch onto his face and douse him with beer. Rab insists that Vito needs to pilot the ship.
He took over, I guess.
You got 1 strike against you.
No, I don't. What are you talking about?
Bam discovers a squid and decides to play a prank on Ape by placing it on her face in order to wake her up. Ape reacts immediately, and the squid ends up getting stuffed down her shirt. After a moment of panic, Ape throws the squid overboard and realizes with dismay that they are not docked, as she had once thought. As the ship drifts, with Vito neglecting his duties and drinking on the job, Bam devises a daring challenge involving a 37-foot drop into the water. Bam suggests that he will jump off the post holding the sail, and if he does, Phil will have to swing from the boat into the ocean. And taking this risk, Bam executes this daunting jump, showcasing one of the most audacious stunts in the entire series. Following so, Phil swings into the water, struggling as soon as he lands, unable to keep pace with the drifting boat, and begins to panic. Ultimately, Bam intervenes to assist Phil, and a rescue team arrives to save him. Amidst this chaos, Vito just sits there and hopes that Bam drowns. Bam confronts Vito after this for his incompetence and lack of initiative.
So what? I thought you died. I was all happy.
So what? It's your own brother.
Playfully emphasizing the situation and giving him one last chance to redeem himself. As the boredom grows, Vito is still not doing much, and Bam and the crew decide to just push him to his breaking point by finding something he is doing wrong. They taunt him with pettiness and ultimately give him his 3rd strike for drinking and driving at the boat. With the stage set for mutiny, Vito anticipates their next move, which involves attacking him with a hose. Bam seizes control as captain and steers the boat towards a deserted island, where they plan to build a tiki bar. However, Vito is less than thrilled about their new destination, particularly since they took all the alcohol.
I don't know what to say. How come they got a bar and we don't have nothing?
Despite his complaints, the crew proceeds to finish off all the booze on the island before returning to the boat, leaving Vito feeling frustrated and aggravated.
Alright, I'll tell you what, we'll give it to you.
Alright, thank you.
The chaos on the ship reaches its peak as Bam decides to use the cannons on the boat to attack the newly acquired Tiki Bar, which is now owned by Vito. Dunn fires the cannons in probably one of the most shoddy post-effects in the entire series. Glom, caught up in all the excitement, jumps overboard in joy. However, their antics attract the attention of a Blackhawk, prompting Bam to halt the cannon fire. With the intervention of the authorities, the crew ceases their activities, and Bam decides to sail back to Westchester. The episode concludes with an entertaining Deco music video featuring him as a pirate in a classic Narkill-like fashion. I really wish we had a long cut for this in the bonus scenes. That would have been awesome. Tragically for Brandon Novak, he would have a much more depressing time. During the filming of Mutiny of the Bam, Bam had personally requested that Novak be flown in to be a part of this episode. MTV of course complied by flying Novak in and paying for his meals and lodging. Yet, when the time came to board the pirate ship, Novak was denied entry due to the ship reaching the legal limit of occupants. Novak was forced to stay at the dock while the filming continued. Novak's appearances being brief is explained deeply in his book. His experience on set was mostly negative. While his appearances right now are still brief, Novak would soon become much more relevant in Viva La Bam Season 4, as well as Bam's life in general. Season 3, Episode 6, Angry Ape. At 10 AM, Ape and Phil are enjoying a relaxing lounge in the pool. Bam arrives with paint, and Rab wields a tiki torch to stir it. They take the paint to the pool, and upon arrival, Phil questions the lack of swimwear, which leads to the paint being dumped into the pool where Ape is lounging. Ape questions him, and Bam says that it's St. Patty's Day.
And we'll be ready when St. Patrick's Day comes around.
Bam then accuses Ape of being bitchy. He then jumps in the pool doing some sick moves on his skateboard. Bam then says if she can go 24 hours without bitching whatsoever, he will buy her whatever she wants. A clock begins and restarts every time she complains. Phil reassures Ape about the challenge, reminding her of the rules in play. 2 hours later, Ape begins to do laundry. However, Deco has got a surprise for her, with the presence of red dye. He pours the dye into the washer and then begins to talk to Phil and Ape and distract them. He starts mentioning the colors red, continually finding sentences using the word, with a redometer being featured on the screen.
And that's why I read the directions. I read them and read them and read them time and time again.
Ape then asks why Deco is so fixated on the color red and begins to check the laundry. She notices and expresses that she is shocked by this. Deco, however, is waiting for her to complain, but she did not. Later, at 1 PM, Ape decides to get out of the house and go for a drive with Phil. Phil asks Ape why she agreed to do the challenge, and she says she has something to prove. Her goal is to see Bam wear a suit for the very first time in over 10 years. They then arrive in town for lunch. While enjoying their food, Bam pulls up and admires his mom's parking, which she backed in. Perfect for what he's got planned.
Big ass truck out there.
Ape begins to hear and notice a tow truck approaching and towing a car, causing her to run outside with a bothered smile on her face.
How am I gonna get home?
Dunn pulls up on a Segway and gives it to Ape for her travel. As she drives across town, Bam isn't done. Knowing her route, Bam and the crew pull out in various vehicles to heckle Ape. This was unsuccessful. Ape did not complain. So there's a bonus scene in between these two next scenes during the television cut. So Vito learns about the deal between Ape and Bam, and Phil mentions to Vito to invite his friends over for his birthday. Bam mentions they are going to rave till dawn.
Rave till dawn? What's raving mean?
Tell him, rave till dawn.
We're gonna rave till dawn. Lots of cakes.
Vito doesn't even know what a rave is. He mentions his birthday to Ape, but she begins to heckle him.
I'm gonna give you a present.
Thank you.
Glom mentions how Ape's car would be better parked on the deck, and he uses a forklift to place it there. When Ape arrives, she is surprised at what she sees. Like, no, seriously, like, how did that get up there? That's fucking crazy.
How did you get the car on the deck?
We needed music.
Bam explains they needed it for music. Don Vito then makes his appearance, mentioning that it's his birthday. Ape harasses Vito until suddenly Bam dumps a whole bucket of water onto her, and instead of complaining, she instead started filling a bucket in the kitchen sink, determined to take her suffering out on Vito. She throws the water on him, and Vito retaliates by throwing food back at her, complaining, It's my birthday and this is what I get? Bam then asks Vito if he wants another hot dog, and Vito notoriously replies with,
No, I'm full of hot dogs right now. I want a hamburger.
Bam then says it's time for dessert. Ape asks what it is, and Bam goes off to grab it, but he calls Ape inside to follow. She enters the living room to see a bounce house straight in the middle of it. During this, the group jumps off from the second floor and uses a rope swing. Bam believes Ape is having too much fun and begins to throw cakes and pies at her from the second floor. However, she still does not complain. The next scene shows Bam, Dunn, and Phil blindfolding Ape and taking her somewhere special. She has metal music headphones on to block out any hints. Bam then mentions Ape's fear of heights. They lead her towards and then into a hot air balloon. The balloon lifts off, and Ape begins to ask questions about their location, noting that it's not a boat. She removes the blindfold and starts screaming relentlessly upon the realization that they are high in the middle of the air. Phil from below, wielding a megaphone, cheers Ape on, saying he is proud of her. Bam then pulls out a TV and just throws it off the balloon, shattering it on the ground.
I love that TV!
Bam then asks Dunn if her screaming should count as complaining. Bam lets it slide though. He also jokingly mentions that the grand plan is still to come, hinting that they are just before the commercial break, which I don't think is true. I'm not sure about that. Now forwarding to about midnight, the crew and Vito gather in the living room for a full-on rave. Ape is sleeping in her room for the night. Night vision is on with Deco preparing to set Ape's clock back an hour to make it seem like she lost. Then the rave begins as the party kicks off at 2 in the morning. Ape begins to head downstairs trying to communicate but ends up being ignored. We get a surprising Mark Hanna cameo that night, which I thought was nice. Phil warns Ape not to complain, but Bam starts to attack him and distracts him. She decides to not say anything and just head straight back to bed. They rave for the entire night. Finally, when morning comes, Ape's alarm goes off and the rave begins to move into her room, where they all dance around her bed. Vito then throws a sandwich at Ape. She goes back out to the living room and finally hits her breaking point. She doesn't care if she won or lost, she has had enough. However, Bam concedes and gives her kudos for making it till dawn. He reveals Deco's trick with the clock, and Ape learns of her victory. She cheers, and everyone dances. Later that night, Ape sits at a lovely candle-lit dinner. Rab, in a suit, begins to serve her some salad, as he calls over Bam, who looks like a sad puppy dog in his little suit. His hair is freshly combed, and Deco giggles at his embarrassment. Bam proclaims it to be the worst day of his life. Ape adores Bam's attire as the two boys laugh at him. She just wants to enjoy one night of dinner with her son. However, Bam mentions he would not do so without the presence of Don Vito. But this was a joke, as he brings out a cardboard drawing of Vito from the last season. As the dinner goes on, Bam mentions how uncomfortable he is. Deco and Rab then present the two with the dinner for the evening: chicken, mashed potatoes, corn, and a fresh can of peas, dumped in courtesy of Rab. Deco continues to make fun of Bam's suit, and in retaliation, Bam begins to chuck a spoonful of corn into Deco's face. Ape reminds Bam of the deal. However, it didn't take long for a full-on food fight to begin. Rab dumps food on Ape, and she becomes immediately upset. Bam leaves, thus ending the episode. The credits roll with Bam holding on to a hot air balloon, doing probably the second most dangerous stunt in the series. He didn't let go, and the balloon began to ascend to quite a deadly level, thus scaring Ape and everyone else around. And after Bam hit the ground, he accused Ape of complaining.
That sounds like a complaint to me.
I was not complaining.
But it didn't count. It didn't count towards the episode. You know, Angry Ape really hits different with age. In Angry Ape, Bam's treatment of his mom, Ape, just kinda comes across as rather harsh. April's reactions, previously viewed as over-the-top or amusing, now just seems justified given the chaos and disruption that Bam causes. The show tries to paint her reactions as just being a buzzkill, but many of her complaints are valid, especially given the ongoing joke about her having to clean up after Bam's messes. The rave scene is also quite interesting to me, especially considering it was an all-nighter. Bam and the crew's ongoing struggles with substance abuse, particularly cocaine and alcohol, could have contributed to the theoretical ability of them staying awake long into the night. However, this is simply speculation, as there's no clear evidence that Bam himself was using anything other than alcohol as of yet, and we don't know how much of this scene was actually scripted. As for the episode itself, I find it somewhat average. I really enjoyed the Deco scenes. We also got a lot of really good Don Vito lines, even though we didn't get to see him much.
Hey, it's my birthday.
If you tell me that one more time.
And Ape's reward really wasn't all that rewarding. And now for one of my personal favorite Viva La Bam episodes. Season 3, Episode 7, Mall of Bam. The episode begins with a rainy day outside, but Bam is in need of practice and begins to skate indoors, choosing to grind on the plasma screen TV in the living room. He falls, landing hard on his ribs, which prompts Ape to come in, fuming about the damage caused to the TV. Bam brushes off her anger, explaining that he needs to practice for his trip to the Mall of America.
Wanna go?
Yeah.
Bam then successfully grinds the TV, earning cheers from everyone around. Ape, still upset, asks if Vito is coming along. Bam responds that if Carrie performs a 360 flip to fakie, then Vito will join them for this. Of course, Carrie nails the trick, prompting even more cheers, and Bam tells everyone to pack their bags as the intro plays. After the intro, we are now presented on a plane, where Deco dips before the flight.
I ain't going to no Mortal Kombat-less mall. I'm out of here. Get the hell out. They have Mortal Kombat.
It's already well known that Deco has a fear of flying, which is why he didn't tag along for this episode and many other episodes. However, it's still just a bummer. Bam mentions that they will be participating in a skate demo, but no one knows that they have a plan to live in the mall for over 24 hours. The Mall of America, being the largest shopping mall in the United States, features over 500 stores, a link to the Metropolitan's transit system, and a massive indoor amusement park at one time was called Camp Snoopy. The episode references that if one were to spend 10 minutes in every store, it would take 86 hours to visit them all. They arrive at the Mall of America with Vito asking if they're going to be checking into a hotel. Bam just gives a smug look into the camera and mentions, but Bam insists to everyone that no one leaves until he skates tomorrow, and a countdown begins. He then gives everyone $100 to go spending and tell them to spend it in very terrible ways. He tells Vito he can only spend his money on food. Vito of course complies, get on an electric cart, and heads to the food court and asks around for the veal scallopini store.
Where's the Bill Scalpini store?
Meanwhile, Bam decides to prank Rake by dropping a slushie on his head from the floor above, which transitions into Dunn discovering a mattress store. He calls Bam, who loves the idea. Ryan then tells the owner how much it would cost to spend the night in the store, foreshadowing a possible sleeping arrangement for the night. Bam begins signing autographs and doing his signature slap, meaning he's going to be preoccupied for quite a while. Glom and Rab try hot sauces, with Rab torturing himself and Glom making him try more to wash it down. Glom ends up spending more than $100 on this and makes a mess on the ground before deciding to bail without telling the owners about the mess. Ape and Phil end up hitting up the arcade and playing some DDR, while Vito continues to eat until finally running out of money. He then begins driving around trying to find a hotel and complaining, hoping that he'll be able to find Bam so he can get more cash. Back to Dunn. Dunn ends up telling a stylist to straighten Rake's hair, making him freak out at the result. And later, Dunn actually makes Rake dress in leather and do a quick photo shoot, throwing a bunch of roses on him. However, this was not what Dunn spent his money on. Instead, he just got a coffee and gave the guy the rest of the money, thus giving him a $98 tip. Rab also got a really funny portrait of himself as he points out that he has Vito eyes. Here's an interesting scene that happened. There was actually an extended version to this one. Dunn was pranking Rab in the bar bathroom. He ended up soaking some paper towels, most of them in water, there was one in piss, and begins chucking them at Rab, who's trying to use the stall. After realizing what happened, Rab goes back to tell Bam about what Ryan did. And as punishment, they decide to give Ryan a straight up swirly. Like, they all grab him, pin him down, and put him straight into the toilet. It was crazy. Finally, the mall would close for the evening, and Bam mentions it would take too long to get a hotel, so they're going to crash at the mall itself. Ape is surprised and denies that this is going to happen.
Pick a nice big one. That's a good big one. Perfect. Thank you, man. Wait, I get that side.
They arrive at the bed store, with Vito entering in on his motorbike, upset by this idea. Bam and him go back and forth, with Bam bashing him with a pillow and Vito trying to flee. But ultimately, Bam attacks him enough for him to get inside the store. Dunn then closes the gate and signals Bam, and they both just lock everyone in, trapping the entire group inside for the night.
That fucking animals! Let us the fuck out of here!
They enter a camping store and begin to pitch a tent, set up a cot, and enjoy a cozy fire till slumber.
Cozy fire.
The next morning, it's time to wake everyone up. Bam brings a storm of skate fans to the gates of the bed store, causing an uproar and waking everyone. And now it's time for the demo. As we already discussed, this was the same episode as the Rockstar episode. So this demo, the CKY performance, this all happened on the same day. And you can actually notice this because you can see the same outfits that both Bam and Phil are wearing. So just a reminder, this took place on June 26, 2004, and it was part of the Zoomies Couch Tour. This demo is awesome. We get more content from it in the bonus scenes, which I'm very happy about. After which, Bam concludes the event at the Mall of America.
Yeah, why didn't you spend $100?
I kept mine, dumbass. Back to Westchester.
Back home, with the additional presence of Deco and Brandon Novak, Deco has created some spy cameras to mess with a buddy named Cameron, who works at a nearby record store. Rab, armed with spy glasses, browses the metal section of the store. Deco calls the record store, impersonating the bartender at the bar next door, and begins talking a lot of shit, saying he's going to pick up $100 in change, and that this was already agreed upon with another manager the previous night.
And you're an asshole.
He then calls the bar next door and tells them that he needs a hand moving the register. The guy, looking to help, enters the record store and comes in, and an argument immediately ensues, while Rab films the entire interaction.
You're out of your... No. Why are you calling me an asshole? I'm just calling you what I was called.
The two guys are both confused and pissed. Rab walks out and the laughter continues as the episode finally ends. You know, Mall of Bam is a relatively wholesome episode. While Bam is working skate demos, his sense of compassion, professionalism, and absolute charm is truly honorable here. It is evident the amount of passion Bam has for skateboarding and his fans, and he will go great lengths to sign and interact with every one of those fans that show up. While Deco wasn't a part of this trip, his absence was redeemed by his hilarious prank call. This episode felt well paced, it was stimulating, it was fun. The concept of spending just a whole night in a shopping mall was just very interesting to me, and I think that just added a lot to the episode's appeal. Any episode that's featuring skateboarding is obviously entertaining, and this was no exception. Plus, the full demo is featured in the bonus scenes on the DVD, making it a treat for fans. Lastly, Season 3, Episode 8, Bamiature Golf. In the opening scene, Bam and the crew are at the parking lot of a local bar. They decide to enjoy a nice round of golf. They mean this by destroying Vito's car once again, all while he's inside enjoying some wings.
I'm aim right about here.
When Vito emerges and sees the state of his car, he becomes upset. Bam proposes a deal. If Vito can beat him in a game of miniature golf, Bam promises never to touch his car ever again.
Oh, you missed the spot there.
Vito, frustrated, drives off in his now severely damaged car. Immediately after this, Bam then coerced Rab to hit himself in the nuts.
And now Rab's gonna hit himself in the nuts.
What?
The crew then begins to brainstorm ideas for holes, and to get the creative juices flowing, they decide to do various activities. Bam verts into the pool and gets the idea of a sucker punch hole. Deco decides to take the zip line down and discovers a really good idea and says a really funny line.
God, I came up with the best idea when I broke my ass back there. You see that?
For another idea getter, Deco thinks it will help him if Dunn puts a golf tee on his crotch, and thus begins hitting golf balls off of this. And you could, you know, it ends up how you thought it would. You know, Dunn is in pain, and we get another good idea, the a-hole. Meanwhile, Vito discusses miniature golf plans with Ape and Phil. Ape supports the idea and begins to schedule practice sessions for him to prepare. Back at the golf course, Bam and Dunn attempt to map out the course, but their efforts involve pushing around Chris Rab by making him outline the blueprints of the course.
Right there, you fucking moron!
Frustrated by them, Bam also ends up throwing a shoe at Rab, who retaliates by taking the key to the crane they're on and just leaves them stranded. But I honestly want to mention that the scene between Bam and Dunn during that period being stranded was very, very wholesome. I was very touched by their dynamic here. Hours go by after realizing they could have easily descended without the key. Bam is now left annoyed and disoriented, showing his frustration with his Vito eyes. Deco gets Bam pumped up and ready for the game by coaching him through various exercises, including sprints, meat punching, and planking, in a montage-like fashion. The bonus scenes also feature him attacking Phil during this. Vito and Phil also train by visiting the local golf course, but Vito's hunger and thirst distracted him. Despite this though, he ends up making a deal with an employee at the golf course. When Vito returns home, Bam offers him a choice between a 4-wheeler or a 2-wheeler for transportation.
Well, Bam, what would I going to do with a motorcycle? 2 wheels. I want 4 wheels, something I can drive.
As the game begins, the rules are set, which include a 5-stroke maximum and a prohibition of playing each other's balls. However, before they start, Rab heads to the stall for doing what he does best, and Bam takes the opportunity for revenge. He and Dunn duct tape the stall shut, trapping Rab inside a porta potty for the entirety of the game. Bam arrives at the first hole in a pimped out gothic golf cart.
Okay, we can't go by here, take away right now!
The first hole was called the Peephole, and it features a long stretch of thin road with a hole at the end. It also includes a room for the player to peep into, which reveals an attractive lady. Bam uses and struggles with a hockey stick, only managing a score of 4. When it becomes Vito's turn, he peers into the hole only to find a man mooning him. Despite being upset, still manages to score a 3, but of course complains about it.
Everybody gets to see the girls but me. It's unbelievable. This is the worst golf course ever, man. I get ripped off every time he does something.
The second hole is known as the biker hole. A biker gang harasses Vito and obstructs his game with their motorcycle, resulting in a score of 5. The employee from the golf club arrives with a golf cart equipped with Vito's secret weapon, a lot of alcohol and food.
Oh, I thought of a hole. The A-hole.
Moving on to the A-hole, a spinning A with the hole placed directly underneath it. Bam manages to get a hole-in-one trying to score this, thus having the score end in a tie. The hole following this is the Don Vito pie hole, which features a papier-mâché-like sculpture of Vito's head with pie coming out of his mouth.
This is the ball, and you're the hole.
Yo, idiot, this ain't the way it works.
While Vito struggles, Bam scores another hole-in-one, thus taking the lead. Other holes include the Ninja Hole, the Sucker Punch Hole, the Zombie Hole, and the Rake Yawn Hole. Bonus scenes reveal additional holes that weren't featured in the episode, like the Corn Hole, the Golden Shower Hole, and the Scrap Hole. The Scrap Hole in particular features damaged or discarded sculptures that were used by their local golf course. The episode doesn't specify this, but Phil, Dunn, and Deco were also playing the holes alongside of Bam and Vito. Of course, Rab was supposed to be a part of this, but we know where he is.
Yo, Bam, you got a hole-in-one?
Despite the various challenges, Bam is only 1 point ahead of Vito in the score. And finally, they reach Deco's prize hole, the GH hole.
The glory hole is wonderful. You must salute and have some respect for the damn glory hole. But once that's done, you want to get deep inside, don't we all?
Where Vito successfully secures a victory by 1 point because Bam hit his maximum here. Fireworks celebrate as Vito wins as he demands his car back. Returning to Rab, Bam reveals that he can no longer mess with Vito's car, ending the episode on a somewhat somber note, while the song "Do the Buildings and Cops Make You Smile" by Bedroom Walls plays in the background. In exchange for payment, Dunn presents Vito with a mini motorbike, which Bam amusingly points out it has 3 wheels, much to Vito's dismay.
Give me a car, Bam!
You don't want it?
No! Run it over with the Hummer!
Vito then retaliates by driving off with Bam's Hummer, leaving Bam surprised by his unexpected departure. The episode concludes by teasing the next season of the show, which was already filmed by this point. Bamiature Golf serves as a creative season finale, albeit an extravagant one. The efforts invested in designing the individual holes of the course is quite notable. Deco in particular shines in these last 2 episodes.
Yeah, I don't know what wood this is, but I'm sorry.
It's clear that Vito's car will always be a target for mischief. However, upon my second watch of this episode, it does feel like it's starting to get really redundant and it's starting to feel a little bit old. But with that being said, we have completed seasons 2 and 3 of Viva La Bam, guys. Let's talk about some of my final notes here in the conclusion. Season 3 of Viva La Bam stands out as a favorite for many viewers, myself included. Each episode is filled with intriguing ideas, easy to follow storylines, and a plethora of cameos and variety. The adventures at CastleBam have become even more grandiose, showcasing the ever-expanding possibilities within the unique setting. Similar to Season 2, Season 3 highlights the growth of CastleBam, with new additions constantly being made for the show. The idea of living in such a large and dynamic space, surrounded by friends, and making content by simply hanging out, is undoubtedly appealing. It's a fantasy that resonates with many, myself included, as we yearn to be a part of something as exciting and unconventional as the world portrayed in Viva La Bam. In a community post, I asked you guys what your favorite episode in these 2 seasons were. The top 3 being Fort Knoxville, Mall of Bam, and Treetop Casino, with Fatboy Faceoff, Uncivil War, and Demo Derby being mentioned as well. One thing I've noticed within the Jackass and Bam Margera fandom is the polarizing way people view Bam Margera today. Many choose to shame and bully him for his actions on social media, particularly Instagram, and others choose to defend him on all fronts. Personally, I find myself somewhere in the middle. Bam has already been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and he has suffered from a lot of trauma from the darker side of his career. However, Bam has also crossed a lot of boundaries on his IG account. He has cursed out 911 operators for not tending to a noise complaint.
You should be ashamed of yourselves. It's been 2 hours of us trying to sleep and fucking this dude's throwing shit everywhere and nobody showed up.
I haven't talked to you at all, unfortunately.
Well, then who did I talk to before 18 times?
I have no idea, but it wasn't me.
You fuckers are worthless!
And thus got himself into a fight with a homeless man causing the noise. This is one of the many examples of why people choose to villainize and even attack Bam in the comments. However, Bam at the end of the day still has a chance to grow and recover from his problems. He has made significant progress in his treatment for alcoholism, and we should remain hopeful that he continues on this path. The points I'm going to make here are based on my observations of his character in the show. I understand the show is staged and that Bam's character doesn't necessarily reflect how he acts in real life, but my comments that I'm going to be saying going forward are just purely speculative, should not be taken as fact, and this is all based on how I felt after watching the show. One thing I never mentioned in season 1 of the series was in regards to CKY. Many of the stunts on the CKY tapes were staged in some sort of way, and I received a lot of feedback on that point. Some would even argue that CKY was even more staged than Viva La Bam. However, it is important to note that CKY did include a lot of skits and skating, which were already planned and scripted in their own way, but we're more referring to bits like Rent-A-Car, which was designed to appear genuine, like they got an actual rent-a-car and destroyed it, but they were actually intended to trick the audience into perceiving it that way. Viva La Bam was scripted to some extent as well, but primarily in a different, more corporate level. The CKY crew frequently went off script to create what they thought was good content. Season 3 of Viva La Bam presents a mixed bag in terms of authenticity, showcasing both scripted scenes and genuine moments. While the show often followed a detailed script, many of the antics, pranks, and interactions between the cast members were spontaneous and organic. This blend of scripted and unscripted content sometimes creates a disconnect for viewers, as it can be challenging to discern what is genuine and what is part of the planned narrative. The scripted scenes in Viva La Bam contribute to the overall storyline and the entertainment value of the show, but they can sometimes feel forced or contrived. On the other hand, the genuine moments, driven by the natural dynamics and personalities of the cast, are often the most memorable and engaging for viewers. The irony in Viva La Bam often stems from the characters' awareness of this forced scripting. They recognize that the situations are contrived or cliché, but their self-awareness and laughter add a layer of humor, making it ironically entertaining. For instance, in Community Disservice.
Phil and the kids. And the elderly.
Viva La Bam was heavily scripted by the production, but it was up to Bam whether they followed the script or not. When they do follow it, the crew had a lot of fun with these scenes, genuinely reflecting the camaraderie that is so admirable throughout this series. Reflecting on shows like Viva La Bam highlights how our perspectives can evolve over time, especially as we gain more life experience, empathy, and maturity. While Bam's antics may have been seen as amusing and harmless in my younger years, revisiting the show as an adult can lead to a different understanding of the dynamics being portrayed, such as the mother-son dynamic. The mother-son relationship depicted in Viva La Bam deviates from typical social norms, with Bam often pushing boundaries and prioritizing entertainment over the respect and comfort of his own family. Bam's extreme pranks sometimes cross into very disrespectful territory. Bam's behavior towards his mother can be interpreted as an attempt to normalize and even glorify the disrespect he has towards his family at times.
That sounds like a complaint to me.
Which is odd in contrast to typical family dynamics.
Go on, eat.
We all know that Bam is capable of good, and this is simply a product of tough love. However, Bam is being positively reinforced to act the way he does towards his parents, and Ape and Phil seem to be okay with that kind of behavior.
Phil!
Hey, what the hell are they doing and why are you laughing?
Ape and Phil were still very happy and proud of Bam's success. They loved meeting all the people that came to visit, and they treated everyone as if they were their own. They were far from tortured. It's just odd looking back on paper. In contrast, Bam's dynamic with his friends is characterized by loyalty and inclusiveness. Bam goes above and beyond to support his friends, such as Brandon Novak, despite all the resistance. It seems like a common occurrence in Bam's character is that he loves setting rules that he isn't going to follow.
Hate to break it to you, but we're winning.
This is evident in episodes like Community Disservice, and especially Uncivil War. Since he is the only one making the rules, Bam often sets them merely to defy them later, asserting dominance that he is in full control of the show. And while he is the star of the show, this behavior kind of projects a little bit of an ego. Bam's defiant and vengeful nature is well established throughout the show. He will always get revenge and go a step farther.
I just got my car detailed.
Do some community service and cleaning again.
Fort Knoxville was enjoyable to me because Bam actually met his match here. Knoxville will forever be a prank legend, and he proved he could take the hits and throw them right back. During this time, Bam's life was marked by questionable substance abuse. While Bam himself has stated that he hadn't gotten into any substances until he was 25, alcohol and cocaine were definitely present around him during this period. According to Joe Franz, 2004 was when Bam's real struggles and darker side of his story began to emerge.
When we did an episode of Viva La Bam, and Bam went and he had some pizza. It was about half a piece of pizza, and he threw it up. And Tony Hawk was there. He said, "Hey, Bam." I looked at Tony, and Tony looked at me. Tony got a worrisome look in his face, and he said, "Hey, Bam, you bulimic?" Just like that. And Bam said, No, I just throw up whenever I eat. Tony said, "Yeah, man, that's bulimia. You got to get help."
Something we will explore in greater detail later on. Season 3 of Viva La Bam is on the cusp of a pivotal point in Bam's life, with significant changes looming on the horizon. The return of Brandon Novak, the launch of Radio Bam, and the legal battle with the township he lives in hint at new directions for Bam's career and personal life. Signs of strain in Bam's relationship with Jen also suggest impending change on the horizon. As Bam's life becomes increasingly busy, he takes on more responsibilities. Thus, with those more responsibilities, equate to less time skating. The dynamics portrayed in Viva La Bam are likely to evolve further. The show has provided a glimpse into Bam's world and the challenges he faces, but as he navigates these changes, there will undoubtedly be more opportunities, both healthy and not. Thanks for watching.
It's been 4.5 goddamn hours.
Who are you talking to?
My fucking self. I need to let out.
And thank you to my patrons, F-Fom, Dinky My Winky, Burgundy Red, and my silver members, who are listed in text. Thanks, guys.